Hello everyone, welcome back. I'm Jeff with Alternate Route. Today we're going to talk about the active duty versus the Guard and the Reserve, the pros and cons of each, so that I can give you the most information possible so that you can make an informed decision for yourself. So let's get to it. Okay, to start off, we're going to talk about the active duty. We're going to talk about what it means to be part of the active duty. When people talk about the military, they always think about the active duty side of things. They don't think about the Guard and Reserve because most people don't know about it. But what that means is it's the full-time, they're a full-time employee with the military. Typically, they're going to go until retirement. Retirement is 20 years. You can go past that. But in order to receive the benefits, the Air Force pension plan, and then the free healthcare, you have to do at least 20 years. So that's what people talk about active duty. Now, what are some of the pros and cons? Now, I'm going to specifically talk about the pilot side of it. There's many different jobs in the Air Force, but I'm going to talk specifically about being a pilot and what it means to be a pilot in the active duty versus the Guard and the Reserve. So to start off with some pros, it is a full-time paycheck. So you're going to be on orders all the way through. And so you've seen a lot of my other videos, but once you come out of pilot training, at that pilot training graduation date, your commitment to the Air Force is 10 years. So no matter what, the Air Force owns you for 10 years. And you'll be getting paid based on your rank for those full 10 years. And then at the 10-year mark, you'll be able to either get out, go to the Guard and Reserve, get out of the military altogether, or continue on with active duty and just sign a commitment to continue to stay on. So the full-time paycheck is nice, and you don't have to worry about anything. They take care of your housing, they give you stipends, and basically all you have to do is work. You don't have to worry about the money or anything like that. You have a house on base if available, and if not, they'll give you basic housing allowance to go off base. And it's typically about the average house in the area based on your locality. So there's that. If you do like to travel the world, depending on your airframe, they will send you all over the world. So for example, if you're an F-15 pilot, there's two places you're going to go. You're going to go to Japan or you're going to go to England, and that's it. That's the only F-15C bases that are available. Now, if you can take that and transfer it and go to the Guard and the Reserve, and there's a whole bunch of F-15C bases stateside. So that's just a simple example. But for me, like a C-17 pilot, you could be stationed in Germany, but there's a lot of C-17 bases that are stateside because our mission is to get stuff from the States overseas and then come back to the States. And if we're going to be overseas, then they'll just deploy us. So it depends on your airframe. So it depends on what you want. However, if that's what you want to do, you want to travel the world, look at the type of airframe that you want, and then active duty will move you every 3 years to a new location. So that's always kind of nice. It's paid for, and it's kind of a quick pace of life. But you know, if that's something you want to do for a few years before you start a family, that would be something to look into. But again, you are held to that 10-year commitment. So just think about that. The other thing is that the Air Force, the active duty, has an awesome community. So everybody's in the same boat. They're all about your age. You know, the people who are single all the way through, the people who are majors, lieutenant colonels, who have kids, and everything in between. And everybody's doing the same thing. They're all pushing towards the same goals. And so you definitely have a sense of community, people helping each other out, always having hangouts on base, you know, having barbecues with friends. It was just a great experience. When I was in pilot training, I got to experience that a little bit. That is one thing that I do miss about being in the Guard Reserve is everybody kind of has their own life on the outside, and so there's not that much time to get together. And then one last pro I'd say is the retirement benefits of active duty. Is when you retire, you will get a consistent paycheck. I think after the age of 65, there's a whole bunch of other rules you can, with active duty time in, you can decrease the amount of wait time before you can start withdrawing from your retirement income, but that's a whole nother video. So You'll get a check, but also the free healthcare is kind of the big thing that everybody wants. Healthcare is very expensive, and as you get older, you're going to have to go to the hospital. You're going to have to go see doctors. So to have that is huge. So a couple of cons that I want to talk about on the active duty side is that you don't get to pick which aircraft you fly or the locations that you go to a certain extent. So in pilot training, you don't get to pick which airplane that you want. You have to compete for it. So if you are in the middle of your class, you're not going to have the best of picks with what's available in that drop. So you have to be at the top of your class in order to have the best chances to get what aircraft it is you want. But even then, you're going to go to an aircraft and they're going to send you to a certain location. You don't get to say where you want to go until later on in your career. They call it a dream sheet. So when your 3 years is up and you're about ready to move again, they'll provide a dream sheet and you'll say, okay, these are the top 3 places that I want to go. But again, you don't get to choose. The Air Force says, okay, I see that. We'll take that in consideration, but we're going to send you ultimately where you need to go for us. Another thing is it's a delay for your ability to get into the airlines. So active duty owns you for 10 years, and that whole time you're with them. You cannot leave and go to an airline and come back to the military and do the back and forth like the Guard and the Reserve do. So your first opportunity to get out or go to the Guard and the Reserve or to start applying to an airline would be 10 years after your pilot training graduation, which in the last video we talked about is going to be about 12 years down the road from the first time that you swear in. So something else to think about. And lastly, it's the deployments. Active duty deploys a lot more than the Guard and the Reserve, a lot more exercises that they participate in, and so that's just more time away from your family and something that you should take into consideration. Again, there's going to be more deployments, more exercises based on the type of aircraft that you fly. For example, the fighters do a lot more exercises right now because there's not much for them to do overseas. But on the reverse side, like the C-17s and the KC-10s are deploying quite a bit still because cargo needs to get moved. All right, now I want to talk about the Guard and the Reserve. So the Guard and the Reserve are what people think of as 1 week of the month, 2 weeks a year type people. Now on the pilot side, for myself, we borrow the active duty's C-17s, so we don't own our aircraft, and because of that, we can't come in 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year, and get all of our pilots trained. So for us, we have a little bit more flexibility in when we can schedule and when we come in and do our duties, because if 50 pilots came in on one weekend and we had 2 aircraft to fly, we wouldn't be able to get everybody their training. So they provide us the opportunity to come in, schedule our own training outside of those set UTAs or annual tour weeks in order to get all of the flying that is required. So that's what we talk about with the Guard and Reserve. And so some of the pros here are you do actually get to pick your aircraft and or your location. So if you want to fly the C-17, you can target only C-17 bases, Guard and Reserve bases, and then you apply specifically to that pilot slot. And if you get the job, then you're going to go to pilot training with the intention to be a C-17 pilot. You still have to graduate, pass pilot training, and then you'll go on to C-17 training, but you're not competing at that point in pilot training to get the aircraft that you want. You already know what you're getting. Same thing with the fighters. If you are hired as an F-15 pilot, you'll go through training, and as long as you graduate, you'll still follow on to F-15s. You're not competing. That is your slot to lose. And then on the reverse side with the active duty, you're able to get to the airlines faster. So for me, I went through pilot training, and because I had a bunch of civilian time, I had about 1,000 hours going into the Air Force. I came out on the other side of pilot training and flew the C-17 for about 2 years before I had enough hours to apply to the major airlines. And so therefore I was able to bypass the regionals altogether and use the combination of the civilian flying time and the military flying time to get myself to a major sooner. And so I got to major at 32, 33 years old, and I'm currently going into my third year with Alaska Airlines. Okay, another pro is going to be that you're stationed wherever you get hired. So again, if you get hired by a C-17 unit in Jackson, Mississippi, that's where you're going to stay, or that's where you'll be stationed. Now, it doesn't mean you have to live there. You can commute in. Commuting's a whole nother issue. I'd say that would be a con. You definitely want to live in or around the base that you're located, but you're not moving every 3 years. You're going to be there as long as you are in the Air Force or you decide you want to go to another base. You are still able to retire with the Guard and Reserve. However, that check at the end that you're able to collect will be much smaller because it's based on the amount of money that you made while on active duty or on your reserve status. So it's typically much less. You still do get the medical benefits if you go the full 20. And so again, that's kind of the big ticket item that a lot of people want. You do have less deployments. Like I said, we get the job done by leaving the U.S., going overseas, dropping the cargo off, being gone for a week, flying around, and then coming home. So my squadron doesn't deploy very often, and we do a few exercises, but it's only on a volunteer basis at this point. They haven't had so many exercises that they've made people participate. And lastly, a lot of people talk about the Guard and Reserve as furlough insurance. So when you do go to the airlines and the economy takes a downturn like it did with the pandemic, if the economy goes down, it's usually because there's a conflict going on, there's a war. Nobody could see that the pandemic was going to be a thing. So unfortunately, it was a little bit weird this time, but the airline industry did go down, and I still had another source of income to go back to. So I was able to go back to the Air Force. I did a couple months of full-time orders, flew a couple trips, and I was able to make money even in the downturn of the economy. And even though I was not technically furloughed, but I was put on a leave status with Alaska Airlines. So furlough insurance, if that's something that interests you, that's the pro. And finally, we're going to talk about the cons with the Guard and the Reserve. And I would say that the pay is inconsistent because it is a part-time job. If you're looking for a full-time status to get you all the way through until you get your airline job, there are full-time opportunities available in the squadron. However, for us, there's 5. And there's 50 pilots and probably 40 load masters. So on the pilot side, there's about 5 full-time positions. So not a lot of people want those, but again, it ebbs and flows with the economy. So even though they are available, I wouldn't bank on that. Just understand that it's going to be a limited paycheck. You only get paid when you come in and work, fly, or do office duties. It can be feast or famine, like we talked about with the economy. If the airlines take a downturn, all those airline pilots come back to the squadron looking for pay, and now we're having to stretch each dollar out and try to get everybody fed. So it's kind of a cooperation with the squadron, that everybody helps each other out. Nobody takes too much, and make sure that everybody gets a little bit of pay to just get themselves through to the next upturn. And then I'd say the last con is that while you are a part-time member, you also have to have another job. Pilots go on to go to the airlines, and but some people don't. So I have people in the tech industry, firefighters, nurses, police officers. Everybody is represented in the squadron, and so they have full-time jobs outside of that. And then you add your commitment to the Air Force on top of that, and your life could get really busy. It takes time away from your family. So that's also something to think about. All right, so I hope that helped. That's kind of a quick and dirty personal explanation about what the active duty versus the Guard and Reserve is. Obviously, I'm pro Guard and Reserve because it works for me, but I'm not saying that everybody has to do it. So take this information, continue to do more research, find out what best fits your lifestyle, whether it's a full-time job all the way through for 20 years and serving your country, or serving your country while also pursuing some of your own personal goals on the outside. All right, I hope you found some good information in that, and subscribe, leave comments below, and we'll see you next time.